The highlands of Peru have many archaeological sites, the most famous, of course, being Machu Picchu, but there are literally hundreds of others. And today, we're exploring a little-known site, at least little known to visitors from outside of Peru, and it is called Quirumiac, which is an expansive area mainly of Inca construction. So here you see quadcopter Pachacutec floating above the site and approaching a staircase as well as a polygonal wall, most likely created by the great Inca civilization. This site covers several hundred acres, and we will be filming just a short part of it to give you an impression. It's quite high up in a valley, about an hour north of Cusco, and here again you can see Inca constructions, ceremonial area there as I fly past me. And again, quite expansive. Unfortunately, the site is in ruins because many of the Inca buildings were pillaged by the later Spanish conquistadors and people even afterwards for building material. But you can still see evidence there of terracing and the remains of ceremonial structures. Now, Kia is the Inca Quechua word, or Runasimi is the proper pronunciation of the name of the language, and it means moon. Rumiak means stones of, so therefore the stones of the moon. But why would it have such a name? You can see that the Inca were lovers of water systems, such as this beautiful channeled small waterfall. But now we are starting to come close to the focus of this video, and that you can see in the center is this almost horseshoe shape or arch shaped series of cuts in very hard andesite stone. And of course you can see that there's a staircase basically leading directly to it. The question is, what was the function? Many believe that it's a lunar calendar. However, some people, such as engineer Arlen Andrews, in fact believes that it's a solar calendar of some kind, and that the shadows cast from the different facets, here you can count all 7 of them, the shadows create a specific pattern, and this is why he believes that it is solar in nature and not lunar. As Pachacutec flies over it, you can see that it's quite a refined piece of work, and it's unknown whether the Inca made this or whether the Inca in fact discovered it and built a ceremonial site around it. It's the only one of its kind that I know of in all of the Inca world, which originally included Bolivia, a large portion of Chile, as well as Ecuador and southern Colombia. It does face east, and the sun sets right behind it in the west, and so therefore that was the initial reason why Arlen Andrews believed that it was solar in nature. And I filmed this many times for him and took several photographs so that he could analyze, and in fact is building a full-scale model of this intriguing, unique feature in very hard stone. The surfaces are not perfect, but they are quite refined, and it's possible that any unevenness is the result of weathering and not of bad workmanship. Again, it's only one of many sites, and this Inca pathway leading away from it doesn't lead simply towards the mountains, but towards what we've been told are several sites beyond. So why not join us in May or June of this year? We are here at Rumiok, which is outside of Cusco, Peru, homeland of the great Inca civilization. And aside from this Inca stairway, there's a fascinating feature here in the distance. And what that is a carving deep in stone. Now, Rumiok, Kia is moon. Rumiok means stones. So this is the place of the stones of the moon. But obviously you have to face forward with this bridge. But what we're here to ascertain is the function of this. Too many people say that everything the Inca did was ceremonial, but there's usually also a pragmatic function. So, gentlemen,
well, the shadows already moved past the middle, so probably depends upon the seasons. The whole thing has to be calibrated in some fashion. But I imagine the guy sat right here. I think they would have carved down a smoother seat. Maybe they had a straw mat, but I think they sat right here and looked at it. And there are certain shadows and marks on it. There are certain shadows and marks on it that are calibration devices. Probably related to the seasons, the equinoxes, the solstices. But I also believe that they use it as a daily timepiece. Reloj.
So rather than being necessarily the stones of the moon, it could be the stone of the sun, as in a clock.
You might come out here on full moon nights and check for lunar shadows too.
Good idea. Well, like many places, this might be multifunctional.
It took some brain power to realize what they wanted to do, to calibrate it such that it does what they wanted to do, and then carve it out and make sure it did that way. We don't find any examples yet, on this tour at least, whereas they started some kind of stonework and then scratched it out and said, oops. So these people knew exactly what they wanted to do when they started.
Yeah. The arc, the angle of the arc, the fact that there are that it's bilaterally symmetrical, it looks like. And there are 7 wedge-shaped things. Unfortunately, this is the only one that we know of so far that looks like this. There are thousands of carved out areas that look like seats, and conventional archaeologists say that they're stone quarries. However, they vary in terms of quality. Some of them are really poorly executed, and some do look like some kind of machine cut them, not lasers.
I'll add another soundbite here. We've only found one of them. Maybe they only needed one. One was enough.
Excellent point.
You know, this could be the Greenwich Observatory or the Stonehenge of the Inca.
Exactly.
Or whomever.
Right.
Wouldn't be a bad job, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Plenty of water, poke, cushion,
yeah,
coca leaves to chew on. Sit here, and you wouldn't tell time. Time would tell you.
Right. So this seems to be our clock. That's what Dr. Arlen Andrews is looking for right now. That's why he's seated up here. Right now it is 11:40. So we're going to see, with the passage of time, if the shadow lines up with any of these marks. And while we're waiting for that, I'm going to inspect more of this area. So you see here, megalithic building. Next to it, smaller stone construction. Conventional archaeologists insist that all of this was done during the Inca period. However, the more we look, the more we are getting evidence of the fact that at least two cultures preceded the Inca, and they were more technically, or had greater technical prowess in terms of they seem to have had what we would call modern machines. Now that is in no way to detract from the Inca, who were geniuses, absolute geniuses in every level of social, industrial, political, and military development. They were an astonishing culture. Cusco, Peru is in the background. And Senor Balthazar. This is monumental building. This is the gateway of the Inca. This wall blocked entry to the city of Cusco from the south. But what's even more interesting, aside from the fact that the Royal Inca Road, which is now a highway, originally went straight through here. But what we do see, definitely, is we see definite evidence of a culture that existed prior to the Inca, and they were megalithic builders. Because I surmise that originally that was the left-hand side of the entrance, and that was the right-hand side of the entrance. All of this was open space. But when the Inca came, they built this here, possibly as a watchtower, but more importantly, it created a choke point. So anyone entering or leaving the city of Cusco had to go through one of these two gates and pay a toll. Because the Inca were very good at collecting taxes. But this is sheer, clear evidence of the masterwork of an earlier, technically superior culture. When you compare this, which is known Inca style from between 1100 AD and 1532 AD, and then you compare it with this, the difference is wildly different. And highly unlikely that the Inca either evolved from this form of construction to this, or devolved from this form of construction to that, but that this was here when the Inca arrived. And they added on by building this huge tower. So, again, in the background here, we have technical absolute mastery. Here we have Inca work, which is still very difficult to do. I mean, the size of the stones, the excellent execution. But you can't, there's no comparison between this style and this one. I'm at a site called Sayhuite, outside of Cusco. And there you can see an Inca construction. It's a terracing system. It's actually a waterfall. Water was channeled through a series of terraces. Probably it had some kind of ceremonial purpose. But what I've come to see as I walk over this little bridge is something that defines why I call my little entity or enterprise Hidden Inca Tours. And that's this. This is pre-Inca work. This is megalithic, and this is most likely thousands of years older than the Inca, so far back in time that there are no oral traditions relating to it. Now what you can clearly see are these are giant boulders that have been shaped by some kind of tool. The question is what tools and when. Too often places like this are called Inca ceremonial sites, but the truth is this is much, much older than the Inca, very hard stone, and the tools used would have been tools much harder than what the Inca had. The Inca solely had bronze chisels and stone hammers, and this would have had to have been done with steel, carbon steel, tungsten carbide, or even possibly diamond. Now the most amazing thing here is what you can tell is this was once one piece of stone and it broke in two. The question is, when did this break happen? Clearly it happened after the stone had been shaped, because you can see where the surfaces lined up. It would not have been a flaw in the stone because any sculptor or stonemason would have detected the flaw prior to doing all of this work. And it's also not the result of settling of the stone, because even if the land had settled, there's no way it could have snapped a stone of this scale in two pieces like this. Now, if this was a flaw in the stone before or during it was worked on, unlikely during because it looks very finished, but any stonemason or sculptor would have noticed a crack of this scale prior to breaking. The finishes here are smooth and clearly look finished. The question is, how old is this? It's doubtful that the Inca made this because it's andesite stone, which is very hard. It's as hard as or harder than granite. So you would need at least steel, which the Inca did not have. So what I believe is we're looking at an example of lost ancient technology at work. And the thing is that these sites are rarely made of like one or two interesting stones. There are usually many, but you have to really look for them. And in this case, we found the hitching post of the sun, or the Intihuatana. It's quite a unique stone in that it has this square hole cut into it, which you can see. Now, I should have brought a compass to figure out what direction the hole is, but actually what I can tell you is the sun is directly behind me. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so the sun is setting, so that tells us that this hole faces east and west, and that would be logical in terms of it being a hitching post of the sun, or a sun-related stone monument of some kind. This is the interior of the Coricancha in Cusco, one of the technical marvels of the ancient world because of the exactness of the craftsmanship. There's clearly no mortar or cement or anything involved in its construction. And the question is, if this was supposedly the first building built by the Inca, why is it technically the most perfect? Nothing else matches it whatsoever. Other curiosities are these holes. These holes could have been made by the Spanish. If they're made by the Inca, what kind of drill did they have to do that? And here's where we see the incredible tight-fitting nature of this entire building. And also this strange ridge, which you can't see too well, but notice these odd grooves that are in the top. What was their function? Were there layers above this? And most curious of all is one stone that's here. And we're here with Dr. Arlen Andrews, who's going to inspect it. It's the stone that has this hole.
Look like it's we're getting the same kind of steps that we had in the other one, it looks like.
Yeah, there's a hole in the side though here. So that's an anomaly. But there's not as much of a wandering pattern. The one thing people are asking are these, see the score marks?
Yeah.
They go basically in a straight line. So that's what people are curious about, as to what kind of tool could do this.
Can you put the light in the other end for you?
So the mystery is that hole. Is that hole done with a hand tool, or was that hole done with some kind of machine? And if so, when? Because this building, according to conventional scholarship, was built probably around the year 1100 or 1200 AD. However, it may be older.
You can look over here. It looks like the beginning of tool marks, like something was pounding away. They left marks on the side. It looks to me almost like some kind of tool was driven. I don't see any.
Yeah.
I don't see
spirals anyway.
Any spirals or any steps like we saw on the ones over at the other little village in the museum. So all these right here, look, all these are some kind of marks of a tool that was driven down. Now that might have been afterwards. Oh, wait a minute! I do start to see some of those marks.
What kind of marks?
Mark in the wall. Circular mark in the wall. I see one. I have a feeling this was another one of those core drills. That they had some weight or something on top, and they cranked it in some fashion. And with a core drill. Now what it's for, I don't know. The one on the side is obviously, they didn't care about how it looked.
No, this one.
It was just chipped out.
No, this was pretty.
It was just chipped out.
Yeah, pretty crap. Well, I shouldn't say crappy, but not as well done as whatever this thing is.
And one thing we can do, since we have vertical space, I'll take the video microscope.
Oh yeah.
And put it up against there. While I'm at it,
Great
let me
idea.
try to capture some. Wait a minute, I gotta refocus here.
This covered archway is the way to the Temple of Viracocha. And on either side, growing, are these little trees whose name I've forgotten, but the bark that is here is an Inca incense, used almost in the same way that sage is used by native North Americans. And this these are the remains of the Temple of Viracocha. And once we go inside, we're going to do an analysis of the different levels of construction. We're going to be looking for Hananpacha. See if there's Hananpacha construction here, which would make this site part of the First World, much older than Inca. We'll see. This is the main section of the Temple of Viracocha, and the wall was actually the central wall. Where I'm standing would have been where the outer wall would have been. And as we look, we can see that these lower sections are Uranpacha construction. This is pre-Inca. It's quite possible that at some time in the past there was a major cataclysm of some kind, or that work was stopped for some reason, and then afterwards, when the Inca arrived, they used adobe to build up to the top. And these are probably pillars that help to hold up the giant roof system that would have once existed here.